got a second delay in the record. Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Kane Williams. Kane, how are you doing today?
Good, Daniel. Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I am actually really excited. I know that you contacted me a while ago, and I was like kind of just feeling the season four like slog. It was like kind of towards like I think like really like the towards the I was done with about two-thirds of it, and then the last third took a while. So I feel so accomplished right now that we're actually able to do this despite my child's sleep schedule getting in the way. So I really appreciate you being flexible. So I feel so good. I kept saying I got Kane first. People kept asking. I was like, nope, we got Kane Williams first, and that's going to kick off season five. So I'm really, really excited to chat with you today. I was really excited to see you on some of my friends' podcasts as well recently. So I checked those out. So I'm actually going to attach a few of those people in the description as well, because I'd love for people to check out their channels as well. But it was cool to see you with some other people that I know and on some other, profiles and stuff like that. So I thought that was really awesome. Made me really jealous because I was like, I got to wait until season four's done. So it gave me some more anticipation for our chat today. But I think that's really awesome. So, Kane, we'll start with that first question. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Yeah, so I'm early into my writing journey, so I'll take it back a bit though. So from the age of 10, I've been wanting to write a book. I was an avid reader growing up, and I loved fantasy. I loved action adventure. I mean, I vividly recall standing in the library in primary school in grade 5 or 6, um, tossing up whether or not to reread The Hobbit,
Mm,
or Ice Station by
okay.
Matthew Riley. So I'm Australian,
Ooh,
and I Matthew
yeah.
Riley is a fantastic Australian author who writes books that are almost too big to become movies. They're just their budget would be too large.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah. That's totally true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so that was always the inspiration, that was always the vision. And I picked up the pen a number of times, especially over like
Mm,
school holidays or
mm,
university break
mm,
or summer holidays. And I made progress. I really
mm,
enjoyed it, but I always had too many other priorities, and it wasn't
mm.
until I made my book a real priority, found a rhythm, carved out time, and that was 4 years ago when I sat down to really write it in earnest. And 13 or so drafts later, I lost count. I released Perils of the Past. Wait, let me hold it up. Perils of the Past in May
Awesome cover.
this year. So yeah, it's only a couple of months old.
Oh, it was only May. For me, that feels like 3 years ago.
I know, I know.
That's really funny. You're blowing my mind here. You actually made me feel really good that I have a prequel novella that's like I'm about to be done with like I draft like 5.5. Granted, it's like shorter, right? But yeah, so you're gonna give me the courage, Kane, to keep working on that one on Tuesday. Because if you could do like 14 or lose count, I can with a larger book, I can definitely finish my prequel novella. So that
Yeah,
gives
you
me some good inspiration. Well, that's so funny because you're so right. Like I never thought about that. And there was a podcast where they had asked that, right? Like a panel where they're like, who would be authors that you would love to see on the big screen if money wasn't an object? So that's so funny because I never would have thought of him. So that's really awesome. But that's totally true. So I actually discovered it
he
in the same year as The Hobbit, actually. So it's so funny. I believe I can't remember if I was in seventh grade or eighth grade. I believe I was in eighth grade. No, I think it was in seventh grade. Because I remember after that, The Fellowship came out when I was in like fall of when I was in eighth grade. I was like playing soccer or something, and my one of my best friends at the time, his mom was like all excited, so she like took us to the movie and stuff. Yeah, so that's really cool.
Those
I never
movies
hear
were
anybody say
epic.
that with those two books, so that's funny. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, so when you're talking about like different breaks and stuff, I've had this too, right? Like, what made you keep going? Like, what made you be like, I got to do this, or I'm gonna keep picking this up over and over and time again?
Yeah, I think there's something within that was just compelling me to create. And I know a number of authors just talk about this urge to write. Partly I had, and you can see Antana behind me on the wall, which is the same
Mm,
the same from the cover, for anyone watching it on YouTube, that is. So Antana, I had this character, and that it's the same character I had from the very kind of initial vision of it was
Cool.
her on the top of a mountain wielding a sword, a samurai sword or the
Oh,
like.
that's awesome.
And so partly was that, partly was this character that I knew went on this epic journey, this epic quest, and that I really just wanted to tell that tale and
Mm.
to get it out, to get it out of my mind and onto paper and to bring it to reality.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
partly was that, partly was it was that wanting to be a published author, that kind of
Mm.
um to explore that and to take on that challenge, because it is certainly is a challenge in writing and
Yeah,
releasing a book. And then
yeah, yeah.
part of it was just I just had to. There was just some reason why that was pulling me, a force that was pulling me to the keyboard, that was keeping me up at night, that was waking me up in the morning, that was like, this is something that I need to do.
I totally get that. Like I had a friend recently, he asked me because I like totally screwed up my prequel novella. I had I was researching and I was talking to different people and unfortunately I had talked to my alpha team and then I got a separate uh my character is like a veteran Marine, but in the prequel novella, he's like in the Marines. So I was like talking to this guy. Um Actually J.R. Wise, he's a science fiction military sci-fi author,
Mm.
good friend of mine. Um so we talked a lot on social media about this privately and stuff. So I had went like this. Well, we were talking about tech in 2019 essentially or 2018 or it could be 2017. My events were in 20 like 11. So I just realized that the other day I had just rewritten all these chapters this summer and I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to like do it again. But my friend asked me recently, he's like, I was so fresh. He goes, can you quit? I'm like, no, I cannot. With everything I just said to him was actually what you just said. So you must be my spirit animal or something, Kane, because I totally get that. So yeah, it's that thing that you just it's like an itch, right? And especially once you get there, it's like you just can't stop. So and I hear a lot of my friends say once you publish that first book, right, that then you have to publish another one. So it like gets even worse. I've had a lot of people on here say like, oh yeah, I thought I was gonna get it out of my system, but it made it worse. So I already like
I've
prepared
heard
my
that too.
wife. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. So we'll talk right there about genre. What genre or genres do you currently write in and why?
So, considering what I've just said, no surprise that I'm writing high fantasy, epic
High
fantasy
fantasy. Okay.
that's filled with action, adventure. There's so many things that draw me to fantasy, partly, and you've had a number of guests on that write fantasy, of course, and I've heard them talk about, and it's completely true for me, the endless possibilities that
Oh,
fantasy
yeah.
offers within its
Yeah.
scope, from, the magic systems to flora and fauna and different planets and worlds, and I am certainly drawn to those possibilities and the imagination that comes with that. But in truth, it's really the genre that I also just adore reading. I
Yeah.
mean, whether or not one of my favorite trilogies growing up, other than Lord of the Rings, of course, was the Empire trilogy. So Raymond, Ephraim,
Nice.
and Jenny
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who
So
are both
funny.
incredible in their own right,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
powerhouses, came together and they wrote the Empire trilogy, and it's just even 20 years on from when I read it, it is still one of my favorite books of all time. And yeah, it's when I think when if someone's like either what are you reading or what do you like to read or what are your favorite books, the pretty much the only titles that come into my head, other than the odd action adventure kind of story, are fantasy novels. So it was always
Awesome.
always going to be a fantasy novel that I wrote.
Oh, it's awesome. People are gonna think that like Raymond's like advertising on this podcast or something. It's like it's so fun. I guess recorded a lot with people recently this week in particular that we're talking a lot about well that trilogy and a lot of Raymond's like other books. So it's really funny. Raymond, if you're listening, apparently really popular. I totally get it. But yeah, it's really funny. You're probably like the fourth out of fifth author this week to mention either the trilogy or Raymond's book. So that's really funny. But I totally get it. I actually had just read my first one. Oh, it must have been like about, I think it was like right after it was probably right before the pandemic actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went and bought everything. So about to go back through and get back into it. But yeah, I had found a bunch of them here and there like used and stuff. I just love like the original covers too. Just like the that like older art style actually really got me into art. That's like why I really wanted to go originally into becoming like an illustrator. I switched once I got there. I didn't have the best program, so I switched to education. But yeah, that kind of art always really sticks with me, which is probably why I like your cover actually, because it really reminds me of yeah, like a couple of David Drake's covers, particularly with like the tones and some of the styles. So really, really cool. I actually just picked up one recently. I'm totally blanking on what the title was. I had never seen it before, but it had his name on the cover. So I was like, unless it's a doppelganger or somebody with the same name, I plugged it. But yeah, it looks very similar. But super cool. Well, that's awesome. So now we get to get into the third question, which is always my favorite, which is specifically talking about your book, your world and your characters. So what is your book, Perils of the Past, about, and how did you come up with this idea? Sorry, great title, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. So if I had to put a whole book, 120,000 words, 400 odd pages into
We're
one
gonna make it.
sentence,
Yeah. Yep.
one sentence, it would be the novel follows Antana, a young woman on a desperate journey to find a cure to save those she cares about. So it's as I talked about before, she starts on the top of a mountain, in a temple-like setting. It's remote. She's got two different training regimes. She's obviously got her training regime with the sword, but a deeper thread that goes through the whole novel is that she is trying to unlock her past lives. So this is a world where of reincarnation,
Oh, cool.
and deep within her soul are all of the memories from all of her past lives.
Oh, awesome.
And it's really difficult to access those, to interpret those, to connect with your past life. It's not a world where you wake up and you have any memories. You need to go through a very extensive uh, training program, a very, mentally tough, physically tough,
Yeah,
in order to
yeah.
try and connect with that. So that's where she starts, and that thread continues through the novel. Well, let's just say disaster at the temple shortly follows, and she needs to, embark on what happens in all of my favorite novels, an epic quest for a cure to save all of her friends and everyone at that temple location.
Oh, that's super cool. I have so many sub questions. I'm going to ask the first one though that I thought of
Hmm.
that I think the audience would really like. Where did you come up with like her character idea? Like, did she come and talk to you? Did you see something like where like was that kind of, or did you have the story first? Like, where did you kind of start with in terms of this book? Was it character, world building?
I think it was. I've always had that image of Antana in my head with the temples. I It's a funny thing, as you know, where you're like inspiration. Some parts of my novel I can specifically point to
Yeah, yeah,
this,
yeah.
like,
Yep,
this was a real source of inspiration. And sometimes there's two or three things that is kind of
yep.
mashed together. Other points it just kind of feels like it came out of, like, it's never come out of the blue, but it does. It feels like it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
a completely, and then you think back on it in the later weeks and months, and you're like, well, at that time I was actually watching this and I was reading that and I was talking with my
Yeah, yeah.
friend about this, and then you draw it in. I think on reflection that it would have been around, like, I loved at that time back then, I loved like a Lara Croft with
Mm.
Angelina Jolie.
Oh, she
I
did an
loved
amazing job.
the Mummy, and so
Yeah.
you've got Brendan Fraser, you got Rachel Weisz, and so I was always enjoying. And then similarly, Die Hard with Bruce Willis and Blade with Wesley Snipes, and I feel like she's a little bit of a combination of a
That's
number of
awesome.
these type of characters. This kind of, as the story goes on, just like Bruce Willis in all of the Die Hard, she will progressively get more beat up and take on more adversaries. Just like in The Mummy, there's history and an adventure and humor. Although she's one of my most serious characters. Just like in Lara Croft, you've got, she's a real force to be reckoned with. She's smart and capable, but also kind of haunted by her past. So I think it was a combination there.
Cool.
combined with, and I'm using movies for ease of reference, but combined with a stack of
Makes sense.
different books, and I wouldn't be surprised. I can't pinpoint the exact kind of inspiration for the temple setting, but I talked before about the Empire trilogy, and that actually starts with the main character who's also a female protagonist in a temple setting. And I mean that temple setting lasts about 2 or 3 pages before my one goes on for 5, 6, 7 chapters. So they're very different stories. The Empire trilogy's much more of a political type
Mm.
novel, whereas mine's much more of a action adventure, like The Hobbit, for example, or Lord of the Rings. And so, yeah, I think a number of different sources have all pulled together, but certainly all of my favorite books and all of my favorite movies has pulled it in.
Oh, that's really cool. I actually saw somebody recently where they like had their character, and I want to do this really badly because this kind of happened to me, kind of like what you're saying, is like they had their character, and then they had like puzzle pieces behind them that were kind of like taken apart.
Yeah.
But you could see, right, that someone's like putting like the last one on, but it would have like Blade, Lara Croft, the Mummy, and like that's like where they got, a bunch of ideas from. I thought that was such a cool advertisement for a character. So I really want to do something similar with like a thumbnail or something like that. But yeah, because mine's kind of like my monster is kind of like I was struggling, right? I saw this piece of art. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I loved it. And I started coming up with this character. And I thought the Blood Hunter class was really cool in 5e. So I kind of switched it. I don't know if you've ever seen Vin Diesel in The Last Witch Hunter, but like a
Yes.
very underrated movie. They're coming up with the second one soon. I'm really stoked. So I kind of went and took some of those ideas, but it was so funny. I couldn't figure out the character until I watched Jack Reacher, the TV show on Amazon Prime, season one. And my character was like, main character's like pointing, he's like, hey, I'm more like that guy, not like,
Yeah.
not exactly the same, but more in certain ways. And I watched that first season. It was so funny because I was like, oh, and it totally made sense with kind of what I was feeling, right? I was like, these things weren't working. So I always love to see where people kind of got some of the ideas because I think it's just a really good way to show the audience, right? Kind of like ways to listen to yourself, if that makes sense, to come
Yeah.
up with your own character like that. So I think that's super, super cool. And what a great like mixture there. Like, that'd make a great
Yes.
t-shirt or something like that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I gotta ask though, because like I have in my urban fantasy setting, I have like people, right, who can remember, who are reincarnated and they can start to remember their past lives and gain like skills from that. But one of the struggles I had was like how to limit that. So I'm curious as like, first of all, like, how did you come up with this in terms of, kind of like that same similar vibe, but also like, yeah, like how did you decide the restrictions you were going to put on that?
Yeah, good question. I think the restrictions on the magic system and the reincarnation were both really important to me. I
Yeah.
wanted I wanted someone, and I mentioned this with like Lara Croft. I wanted someone capable and someone powerful and someone confident, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that whatever adversary she was to face was more powerful, was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stronger, faster, smarter, like, all of they had to be terrifying. They had to be someone that at the start of the novel she would not defeat. And maybe by the
Mm.
end of the novel, with all of her growth,
Mm.
all of her skills, all of her companions, they were someone that she could, and you'll have to read the book to figure out whether or not she does or doesn't. But that's the type of growth that I needed to accomplish, and the type of danger that I needed to build into this novel. And so the limitations, well, firstly, like 99.99% of the world can't access their memories of their reincarnated self. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
dream about it, they don't think about it. In fact,
Oh, interesting.
most people don't actually believe, some believe just by way of religion of what they're taught, but most people even question whether or not they are reincarnated. And
Mm.
it's almost impossible to prove. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
she's at a very particular, I won't spoil the temple name that she is, but by way of the temple that she's at, and considering who her master is at that temple, through her training regime, you open up, and the first chapter is of the cave, which is on the front cover. So that
Oh,
cave
cool.
is in chapter 1, and you open it up, and she's training in this cave to access her past life, and she's close, but not quite there yet. And in fact, the closer that she gets, the further that she actually almost pulls back from it, for reasons of who she discovers that her past life actually is. She's
Oh, that's
hoping
cool.
to find, like in The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, right? They are quite
Mhm.
aligned with their past life. Like in their past life,
Yeah, yeah,
if they were trying to protect the bracelet of Anubis, in their
yeah.
current life, they're trying to protect the bracelet of Anubis.
Yep.
But in my novel, I wanted the opposite. I
Oh, that's
wanted
interesting.
that the more she learnt about her past life, the less inclined she was to learn more. She craves to learn more to figure out whether or not it is or isn't, but she's really worried that in fact her past life is completely reprehensible, is someone that
Yeah, yeah.
is against everything she stands for now.
Hmm.
And so there's the difficulty in the limitation is twofold. One, it's almost impossible to access your past life, and you have to go through this training. Two, in fact, she's not even sure that she wants to know anymore. In fact,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
completely changed who she thought she was by reference to her past.
Hmm. You got me wondering what I want to know. I think that's really good. That's really cool. Hmm. It's really interesting. I just always love to see how people take a similar idea. And I want to do this one time on my podcast. I want to invite like another author and then have somebody else just literally randomly give us ideas and then be like, okay, here's like what we're doing, right? And we like can ask questions to verify setting, like basic setting, right? Characters, um, like basic story, right? Like here's the bad guy, whatever. But then both go from there with the basic information and then go write the short story and then share it on the show and then see how different or how
It would be
similar the
so
two
different.
are. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be so cool because then what we would do is publish them somewhere, right? But I think it would be so cool just to see that process, right? Because I talk to people about this all the time, and it's just so funny, and but, because you have far different experiences than I do, right? And it's almost laughable to to think, but people are like, well, I have this similar idea. Dirk Ashton, and I can't remember if it was on my podcast. I had him season 1. I think it was on theirs, but Wizards, Words, and Words. But like he mentioned, yeah, it was theirs. So, but he mentioned, right, like when he was coming up with his first book and the powers, like he even had some of the same names as Neil Gaiman did for like American Gods. And some of his friends that read his book were like, hey, did you read American Gods? And he's like, nope. And they're like, you should, because it looks like you copied a bunch of the stuff, right? And so he went and then he changed some of the names of the powers and stuff. But I just think it's so funny because so many people talk to me about that. I'm like, I don't think it's a big deal. Some people always ask me, like, why do you say your ideas out loud? I was like, feel free to do whatever. But it's like I don't think you'll come up with the same thing in the same way. That's like physically impossible. So I think that's just like a great example of it. But I think that's really cool where you're adding the limitation, right? That not everybody can access them, but also I love that story piece too, is that maybe she doesn't want to know. So I think that's cool. And then I just am assuming as an author that you are going to then put her in a situation where she probably has to figure that out, right? In terms of things that go throughout the book. So
Yeah,
that sounds
that's
awesome.
layered
Yeah.
through. I mean, the main journey is the
It's
journey
cool.
for the cure, but the underlying kind of
Yeah.
journey, and in fact, the only way that it turns out that she's able to secure the cure would be to get
Super.
over, or to surmount, or to understand her past life, and also the
Yeah, that's
powers that
cool.
come with connecting with your soul in that manner.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, I already bought the book, but I would be sold if I didn't. So Everybody else, pause. Feel free. We'll wait. You can go buy it and then come back and listen to the rest. Um, that's really cool. You have me really percolating on a bunch of ideas, which is people ask me. I have my students ask me all the time. They're like, You're gonna do like a fifth season? Like, you need to talk to another 52 people." Like, I really do, because you actually, I won't say what, but you actually just helped me with a couple things, with a couple different story ideas and characters and stuff. So I think that's really cool. I was like really struggling to figure out how do I start like this character, and based off of some things you said, I was like, ooh, I could do it this way. So if anybody wonders, live time, right? This is why I interview people, because you guys give me some amazing ideas. Natural cultural diffusion. So we'll go with that fourth one though. Why do you feel readers should pick up this book, and what do you think will carry over for them for your writing for your next few?
Absolutely. So I am hoping that they really find escapism within
Mm,
the book. So
good.
if they're after a non-Earth world, if they're after high stakes action, adventure, an epic quest. She's also got a tiny little pet, which I like to contrast in some of my marketing stuff, an epic quest and a tiny pet. Um, so yeah, I hope they give it a go.
That's really cool. Can, sorry, can you tell us the pet, or is it a spoiler?
No, so the pet is in chapter one. The pet is in
Oh,
chapter
cool.
one. It is a fantasy creature, but it's uh based on a number of different creatures we have on Earth. It's a
Hmm.
serpentine type pet, but
Oh, sweet.
it's a very small snake-like creature, but it's not a snake in the way that we think of snakes. So
Oh,
I'll
cool.
leave that little tidbit
Yeah, yeah,
out
yeah.
there. But yeah, it's
Oh,
got
that's
a
cool.
number of different qualities, and those specific qualities find ways that is used later in the book. And yeah, I like to drop little like and introduce something, and then just like a I mean, the classic example is if you put a gun hanging on the wall in chapter one, you better find that gun better be used even if it's in chapter 15, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I'm certainly doing that with the various parts that I'm introducing in whether or not it's in chapter one or later chapters, where they will find a way to come back. For the most part, like not every object on every table is going to be used, but yeah, certainly looking to when I create something, it's normally quite intentional. So whether or not it's about the scales that this pet has or other qualities that
Hmm,
it can sense, yeah, I do
cool.
enjoy finding ways because like in a Matthew Riley type novel, I want to put the character in a situation that is life and death and have you thinking whether or not that character will or won't die and have the reader trying to figure out how I might save them. If I save them, I'm not promising that I save every single one. It's not a grim dark though. It's not a dark novel. But people will die in it. But yes, I love throwing the character in a near impossible situation that they can't escape from. But with them being, whether or not it's certain powers that they have, equipment that they have, friends or companions or terrain, there is some very slim chance that they could save themselves. And so the end third of the book is really where I ramp up. The first third is where I'm introducing the world and the problem. I mean, it's character first and it's plot first. I'm not info dumping on you, but you are kind of exploring and getting to understand everything. Middle where we're going on this, she's leaving the mountains and we're exploring a number of different parts of the world. And then that end third is really where I ramp up the action and
Cool.
have a number of near-death escapes.
That's really cool. Sorry, I just had a sounds awesome. I just had a couple subset questions. First of all, because just for our audience and my sake, so when you're saying Matthew Riley, you mean like Jack West Jr., like Seven Deadly Wonders?
Yeah,
Uh,
Ice Station,
yeah,
Temple,
yeah, yeah.
Area
Got it.
7. Yeah, all of those. All of
My
those.
friend was like obsessed with Matthew Riley,
I was
like
growing
all
up. Yeah.
yeah, all throughout like school and stuff. And we started a book club for he was more into like legal thrillers or I don't know. Like he just wanted to be a John like write John Grisham novels essentially. And I tried. I was like, I still love thrillers and I still love, a bunch of different aspects of a bunch of different genres and stuff. But for me, they gotta have, I learned, right? They have to have some sort of fantasy, sci-fi, or horror twist to them.
Yeah.
Something's got to be fantastical. Otherwise, I just get bored. But yeah, he'll be really happy to hear that you were also a fan. So those ones for me were very different. I'm trying to remember like who, because we kind of got together because of that, like those books and that author. But then he wanted me to try some other things that he said were similar, and they were not. By the way,
Yeah.
Kane, I have a couple. I was like, he's like, he sold me up the river. I was like, this is not. We didn't end up like finishing. But yeah, that's a really good reference right there. So if nobody's checked out Matthew Riley, highly recommend. I forgot about Ice Station. I totally forgot about Ice Station. I was thinking, yeah,
It's
like Seven Deadly
it's an
Wonders.
old one, but a goodie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I actually don't remember if I read that one. It's been years, so and I didn't have Goodreads at the time or Amazon Kindle. Now it's kind of nice, right? I like never lose my stats. You ever played the original Fable game for like Xbox? Um,
I had an Xbox back in the
it was
day,
really good.
way back in the day, but no, I don't think we had that one.
Oh, it's really good. If you have an opportunity, I would definitely play it at some point. It's one of the best games I've ever played. But it's funny, right? Whatever you do in the world, so however many books you read or however many fish you catch, you actually there's like a stat thing. And my buddy and I always joke, we're like, when we die, we want someone to give us our stats. Like, how many books did you actually read in your life? I was like, and my buddy's like, yeah, like how many waffles or pancakes did I eat? Because like that's his thing. But mine would definitely be like, I want to know how many books I read and then get like a list and go through and like double check them. But yeah, I don't think Ice Station would be on there, so I might have to put it on there now. But
You'll
that's
have
a
to
really
bring
good
it back.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have the technology, right?
Hmm.
I got to go back because I thought I was going to do this one here in a minute, but I don't want to detract from the character development per se. I just got to ask because I'm a martial artist and I know a lot of people recently who have had listening are as well. So I know one of my friends in particular who listens to the podcast, he would kill me if I did not ask you this question. But what type of training with the sword or martial arts does she actually do? I know he would ask that if he was here, so I'm gonna ask it for him.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a pretty harsh training regime. They're training the body and mind at this temple. So there's a lot of, obviously, a lot of sparring. There's a couple of scenes where so there's, I'll take two. I'll take two by example. One is that she ends up fighting a guy blindfolded to first blood,
Sweet.
which she's blindfolded and the other guy is not. So there's
Oh,
that
that's
scene to
cool.
look forward to. There's a training scene where they're in a ring with sand with hands wrapped and they're going other than they're going hand to hand combat in that way.
Cool.
There's a lot of, I mean, she climbs to the summit very regularly, so there's a lot of, physical training in that
Yeah,
way with the mountain location.
cool.
She's got a sword instructor, hand-to-hand combat instructor. Then there's, I guess, her master, which is more focused on her spiritual journey or inner journey in a sense. So I really enjoy where they have you watch a boxing movie, right? And they might have a couple of different
Yeah,
coaches or a football movie
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to
Mm.
bring in a couple of different coaches to bring each of them with their own expertise
Oh, that's cool.
that could walk through those techniques.
Oh, that's cool. I always love that. Like they did that trope with the newest Snake Eyes movie, like his origin story, which I loved. I thought it was a great movie. Um, and I love G.I. Joe. So I always tease my students like, who do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I still want to be Snake Eyes. He's just so cool. But yeah, but like in the movie, they went back to like the three masters, with like one's like the blind master. If you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it for you, the audience, because just like how they do the different tests And some of just like the tropes they use were just like they were absolutely incredible. It was really really cool. But yeah, like you could just watch like the 15 minutes. I think it's like 10 minutes of like the scenes. I think someone put together I saw a while back. But yeah, they had, like the three masters, and I thought, man, that would be so cool in a fantasy setting. So it sounds very similar to what you had. So I thought it was really cool. So that's awesome. Yeah, I could hear him in the back of my head being like, ask this question, ask this question. So that's super cool. I know that I gotta know now, like, why did you go with the katana for her for the sword? Did that have some sort of significance without spoilers, or was that just
It
like you just thought it'd be cool?
it's always been one of my favorite weapons. Just,
Me too.
going back to the history of the sword and its beauty and elegance, but also its power and danger. It's just always been a weapon I admire. I do. It was also strategic in terms of what she would fight. There are longer swords
Mm.
out there, right? There are longer
Yeah, yeah,
weapons
yeah.
out there, like a halberd, and so I needed something where she would have advantages over a
Mm.
person wielding a knife or something, but she would face difficulties against, someone with, say, a halberd in a large area,
True. Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, it just offered a lot of possibilities. But mainly, it was just that image in my mind, just as probably one of my favorite weapons of all time.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've always trained with karate and stuff with like bow staff or tonfas or
Hmm.
something of that nature. And then my instructor, she's we do Roshinru, so it's like a mixture of quite a few, and a lot of Taekwondo techniques that I used to do. Like they kind of merged them together, even if they don't want to admit it. But yeah, like but it was interesting. So like, but they're very heavy with the Japanese styles that they integrated from. Um, About 40 years ago, maybe like 48 years ago, with the katana. So we do a lot of like Boken katana with like the wooden katana. So I've gotten very used to it. And I've always liked it from, like I thought it was cool and stuff, but now like actually getting to, learn how to use it is really interesting. So it really makes you think differently, I think, for me at least, as like a writer, I'm like, oh, like I've written some things in the past that are definitely false that, so I just think it's cool because you've actually taken into account like things like holobreds and stuff like that. So that's really neat. And I always think that's a good example too for your answer, just for people in the audience as well who might not know, right? Like just like, oh, I'm just going to pick something, but might not think necessarily how that's going to affect the story. So I always think that's a good thing to point out. So that's super cool. And it also looks really cool on your cover too. So
Yes, thank you
she
so
looks
much.
good with the katana. So in terms of what you focused on in terms of world building, we know you focused on the temple, first, but from there, so like you have the temple, but then what did you really go with next in terms of the world building and then the magic system?
It was the feel and the theme. So I when I look at this world, we obviously know that, we've got our population is gigantic and ever growing, and in fact we've colonized most of the areas that we're able to live in, right?
Yeah,
And I wanted near the opposite of that, right? This novel
yeah,
is set. Um, there was a past civilization that got to Iron Age,
oh,
and
cool.
that civilization died out, and so this civilization is back to Bronze Age. So we've got a Bronze
Hmm.
Age civilization, and I was trying to figure out the scope of that civilization, and in fact, I wanted to
Yeah,
make it the world so dangerous to amp up the adventure cycle of it and to make
yeah,
that more interesting, but also just to give it an entirely different feel than the world we have today. And so in this world, in the world of that Perils of the Past takes part in, humans are not the most dominant species. We're not at the top of the food chain. We're not freely roaming. There's not roads connecting all of the cities. This
Hmm.
isn't medieval Europe. This is There's 4 or 5 locations where humans are in a naturally defensible environment. So the top of a mountain is one of those.
yeah,
We've made another one of the civilizations are in the built within the walls of a crater.
Oh, that's cool.
There's another civilization that is more water-based, but they're in a lake island, so an island in the middle of a lake. And
Oh,
so that kind of that water barrier keeps and most of the animals away. And obviously, once you kill the dangerous ones in the water, you've got a defensible zone around you then. And then there's a desert-based one and a cavern-based society. But other than those five locations or so, they humans aren't able to live freely. They're not able to move freely. They would be hunted and slaughtered, and so they're able to only really go out into the world and explore where they're as part of a hunting party, where they're all armored, they're all equipped, where you've
yeah.
only got the strongest in there going out, ideally and generally with mages accompanying them.
Oh,
Otherwise,
cool.
yeah, you'll become dinner or a snack or whatever for a very dangerous creatures that live in the forest, in the skies, in the other locations. And so it was really that when it was world building, I was really attracted to the theme and the feel of the world. I wanted
Hmm.
something dark and dangerous. I wanted something where you walk through that forest and we wouldn't survive. If we were teleported there, we wouldn't survive. And Antana doesn't have magic, neither does so I've got three characters. Antana, Kel, and Xanth. Antana's my warrior, Kel is my seer, and Xanth is my mage. And so yeah, also when Kel, who kind of joins a couple of chapters in, when he joins, he's never been into the forest before. He has no real
Interesting.
desire to go into the forest. He's quite happy living in the Lake Island. And so I did want that to throw them outside their comfort zone, but also to throw them into danger. I guess you're sensing a theme here. I really want to put my characters in that life-threatening situation, which they don't really want to be in, and which,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the reader is trying to figure out how they're going to survive.
It's like dance for me, my puppets, dance.
Exactly.
Makes a better
Exactly.
story though, right?
Yeah.
It was so funny. I wrote some stuff years ago, and then I don't know why I just started thinking about, I mean, I think I just saw something online, that reminded me of a character and then the story. And I was like, oh man, it's like when I go back to it, and my buddy was like, hey, how's it going? And he's like checking me about writing. I was like, I was thinking about the story. And he was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I like the characters. I was like, story was horrible. He goes, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, there wasn't enough danger. I was like, they're supposed to be at like the most northern town, right? And then there's like a thing that happens. They have to go like help like their local like village and yeah, and it's like in between there's a bunch of stuff that happens. There's a bunch of danger. And I said to him, I was like, I think the reason I was having trouble finishing it was like, yeah, it wasn't dangerous enough for the characters. I didn't put them, I didn't make my darlings dance for me or anything. So when I go back to that, I definitely think that's really good advice, right? Because if you didn't make it dangerous for them, it'd be a really boring book for everybody, right? And you probably wouldn't want to write it, and then we probably wouldn't want to read it. So glad you went with the dangerous aspects. So that really sounds awesome. If I could just go back to the magic system. So you said there's
Yes.
mages. So how did you kind of classify like the different types of magic systems or without spoilers or like with these people that are able to remember their past lives? Is that like kind of a separate one or does it kind of all go together?
Yeah, so they're two separate systems. It's not magic to access your past lives. It's kind of buried
Sweet.
deep within your soul. And
Oh,
so
cool.
she's not a mage, but she does go on this journey to be able to access her past life and her memories there. Separately, the magic system, I really enjoy books that have a well-developed magic system with clear rules. And so I'm also a fan. I'm also very happy to read a soft magic system, but I prefer hard rules around it. Prefer the structure of what you can and can't do. I really like to understand and put myself in the shoes of that mage, right? That's partly why
Mm.
we read fantasy is we dream of
Yeah.
casting spells ourselves or teleporting to X location or but casting this fireball or making this appear, whatever we're doing. And so I wanted the rules around it. You talked before about restrictions, and so that I
Yep.
knew just like I needed an opponent for Antana that was probably going to need to be faster and stronger and maybe with a weapon of reach, and so that she was in a disadvantage in all areas. I also needed my mage to have an opponent that
Mm.
was more powerful, more
Yeah.
knowledgeable, older, wiser, and then that they would go through certain fights within the novel, and that yes, at the climax, Antana would fight her main opponent, Xanth would fight his
Oh,
main
cool.
opponent, and Kel would also be facing an adversary, right? And so the magic system I built, I had that in mind in trying to assess the power levels, in trying to delve into what they could or couldn't do and their limitations that they would do. And so it's a system where there is mana in a sense, but that mana
Mm.
is a natural resource that kind of floats through the air. So you've got tiny specks of
Oh, that's cool.
effectively power, and those you collect those specks and you shepherd them into your chest. And so normal people walking down the street can't even recognize this. Mages are the only ones that can see these specks of mana. I won't give you all the formal names that are in my book for it, but I'll use the terms that are more commonly understood here. So these mages are collecting the mana, shepherding them into their chests, and then using those
Oh, that's
that
cool.
power to cast spells. And so you're limited partly by mana, but that wasn't alone enough. I needed to
Mm.
create a system where it cost you effort, mental and physical effort, in order to cast spells. Where you couldn't just cast spells all day long, you couldn't just cast the most powerful spell ever,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You were limited by your training, you were limited by your experience, you were limited by your mana, your physical and your mental, and all of that kind of resonated within the system. And so yeah, there's different parts of it about the types of spells that they can cast depending on which
Cool.
temple that they're a part of.
Oh,
There's
cool.
aspects around the background to the magic system and to the gods. And I even drew on some interesting scientific principles to give it
Mm.
a little more life. So I drew on how an MRI actually works.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
I won't spoil how that fits into the book. But yeah, I was focusing on a number of different aspects to try and make it real and tangible for the
Cool.
reader.
That's super cool. Well, that sounds right up my alley. Again, I already bought the book, so we're gonna pause here if anybody wants to just pause and go buy the book, and then we'll be back. Well, that sounds really cool. I just love how you went about a lot of these different things. It's very similar to how I do things, which is cool. So it gives me hope that I'm on the right track,
Oh,
and then
good.
maybe somebody will read a book one day. But yeah, that's really cool. It also really you're the way you're describing what you did, it sounds a lot like some very similar authors that I liked in the past. So even more excited to read the book now. So that I think that's what's great about interviews, right? Like we all get to learn a little bit more about you, and why you did things and about your book and characters and magic system. The MRI thing is really cool. So I can't wait for that. So that's really awesome. I'm about like a year behind right now. So I got
My
like
TBR is
seven.
ridiculous too. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's ridiculous. I think I have nine books. I'm like almost 50% of the way done. I just been all over the
Wait,
place, like
man,
either
you've got
paperback.
9 books on the go at the moment.
Yeah.
I was reading 3 at a time last month, and I just couldn't even cope with that, right? Normally I'm one at a time.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's two, especially if it's like a physical book and an ebook, like that's my
Yeah,
turn.
yeah. Yep.
Um, I had 2 books arrive that I was really excited to start. I was or only just started one, and I was reading these 3 physical books all at the same. That was a nightmare for me. 9, I can't. I just can't.
It's weird, like so, like I've never been able to do that. So, but like now, like I especially with my son, like I had to switch to Audible. So I'd like go 50% of the way through a book, and then I was just doing books I'd already read before, like physically or on Kindle, just like a recap. And I was like, oh, I think I can maybe do this. So I started to read, like listen to 50% and then read the rest in some manner. It's definitely been able. I've been able to get through a lot more books that way. Otherwise, I wouldn't get through much of anything. But right now, I'm like, have either read 50% or 60% of them or listened to. So I'm trying to like curb the other half. But yeah, it's I gotta just start knocking one down at a time. I kind of got like a mental block recently for that in writing. So I'm trying to kind of get through it a little bit. I don't know. It's weird. I've never had it before. So
Have you ever tried any immersive reading where you listen to the audiobook at the same time as you read it? Like Kay from Kay's Hidden
no,
Gem
that's a great idea.
talks about, yeah, that, and she's a
That's
big
a
fan.
great idea. Oh, I'm gonna try that. That's super cool. No, I've never heard of that. Yeah, I'm gonna try. I mean, I should say I've heard of it for teaching, but I never thought to use it for myself. So
Mm.
that's actually a really good idea. I'm gonna try that. I appreciate that. So I know we're winding down on time here, but I just want to make sure that we have enough time for that last one. But I definitely like the characters sound really awesome. So I know we talked a little bit about them. But like if you could interview one of them, which would it be, and what would you want to ask them?
So I'm torn here. I mean, and I probably wouldn't pick Antana. I feel like I know her the best, and I
Makes sense.
also
Yeah,
feel like she's a very serious. I'd love to meet her to interview her, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
she's a very serious character with a quite a troubled past. So I'm torn between interviewing my seer Cal, who is a little bit of comic relief through the novel. He's a really fun guy. He's a really great guy. Or my mage. I think I'd love to learn as much as I understand the magic system that I created, right? I wrote it. I'd love to interview Xanth about using
Mm.
magic and about
Oh, that would be
that
cool. Yeah,
that
yeah,
experience. So
that would be cool.
I'd love to do that.
That's a fabulous answer. Yeah, that would be really, really cool. I had talked to somebody about this, which is where I got this question from, and they had said something similar, where they had one as a writing exercise where they did just what you said, right? Like they wanted to ask their character. It wasn't a mage, it was something else, but it was still, I would say, like a fantastical power, right? Or ability. It might have been superhero genre, but yeah, but they were talking about it and they're like, yeah, I decided to do it as a writing exercise. And then they end up starting, I don't know if they ended up publishing it, but they started writing a book or a story about a character similar to them who couldn't use powers, who got thrust into a world that a lot of people have them, to then kind of do that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So that's really neat. That's a really cool answer. Yeah, I feel like I would love to like interview my paladin from like 5e and just like I gave him like some cool abilities with like lightning and stuff. So yeah, I would love to know what that's like. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Um, so I know we just want, we're wrapping up here. I want to make sure we have enough time for the last one. So do you have any news, updates, current projects, anything like that that you can share with us?
Yes, so as of 2 hours ago, I just finished a fun short
Oh,
story. So I've been working
oh,
on
congrats.
it's my thanks. So it's my fourth short story that I've kind of finished
Sweet.
since writing Perils,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So this one, I write pretty much all my other stories have been in the Iron Age or Bronze Age, heavy
Oh,
on
cool.
magic. And this one I tried something entirely different. This one I tried dwarves in the industrial age.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, and
Cool.
so I'm focusing on more of the steam powered tech rather
Yeah.
than magic. And so yeah, I'm having a bunch of fun with short stories. It'll either I'm not sure when they'll come out, but it'll either
Yeah.
be via magazines that I submit them to,
Sweet.
and so I've got one of the four slated for publication that's been accepted.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Congrats.
thank you. And otherwise, yeah, there's some amazing kind of anthologies or
Oh, yeah.
collectives of short stories that I've been seeing recently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe I'll go that way. But yeah, certainly if anyone's after updates, they can follow me on the socials or sign up to my newsletter. There'll be plenty of yeah, monthly updates there at least.
Sweet. Awesome. I just want to remind our audience that you can find all of Kane's books, social links, anything like that in the description below, anywhere we're watching or listening to this podcast. If you guys don't mind, go and hit that subscribe button. That'll help us out a lot trying to get that climb for 1K so we can get more people that we've had on, particularly for season 5, but other past seasons as well, such as Kane. I want to get as many eyes and ears on their work as possible. It's always been my goal and the theme of the show. But please make sure you do that. Also, we want to make sure that everybody's reviewing all the products that they are getting from all of our authors and creators. You know, it helps everybody cover artists, editors, you know, copy editors, those kind of things. Anybody you can think of, right? We had audio narrators on here in the past, have some other ones upcoming for season 5. So we got some comics, those kind of things, cover artists, colorists, all those people. So if you guys could just do that and continue that for the theme for the show, just in general for the last couple of seasons, that would be great to help everybody out. Kane, thank you so much for coming on. I feel so accomplished that I was able to get you in for season 5 and for episode 1. So I feel like this was so perfect. I've had just great conversations so far with every single person. Not that I didn't for last season, but I just feel like I don't know what's going on, but everybody just had amazing stuff to say. So I'm so glad that we could start the season off with you and I talking about, you know, perils of the past and some of the other things you have upcoming. I'm really excited about the short stories too. So, but I have perils of the past slated for the upcoming new year. I figured you were episode 1, might as well slot you in as the first one. And I have a kind of a mix of season 4 people that I didn't get to this year and season 5. So I look forward to that. I will be reviewing the book as well with a YouTube video and things. So I'll send you those links once I have them. But yeah, other than that, my friend, good luck with everything outside of the book realm. You know, if you need anything at all, you know, in the meantime, or, you know, if you just get really busy, you know, just feel free to email me or send me a message, you know, on X, and I will feel like I don't have time to share this. Give it to me, and we'll share it in our podcast group on Facebook and all over all the social medias, and, you know, we'll get the news out there for you. But if there's anything else I can help you with in the meantime, you just let me know. But other than that, you know, good luck with your writing and everything outside of that.
And to you, Daniel. I'm
Oh,
excited
thank you.
to see yours.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'll send you a copy. Well, thank you so much, Kane, for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon, my friend. I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
See ya. Boom.